We don't want our children to be like that. But if we don't address these issues like we're talking about now, we can lead our children into being a ticking time bomb, and that can take place in school. Or they can do it slowly and gradually by continuously bullying other children who seem weaker than them.
Hi everyone, welcome to Wisdom for Exploits with me, Bola Amure. Today I have another amazing ladies who will be unlocking the riddles of domestic violence from childhood to adulthood. Before I introduce my guest, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and press the notification bell to be notified whenever we upload new videos. Thank you. My guest is Minister Ibironke John. The guest today is a woman whose story and mission are equally impactful. Ibironke John, a survivor of childhood adversity and domestic violence, possesses a pastoral sensibility and has converted her hardship into a beacon of healing optimism. With a unique blend of Christian value and psychological insight, Ibironke writes, teaches, and advocates on topic of trauma, resilience, and restoration. Her voice is both compassionate and courageous, offering profound wisdom and practical tools for those navigating life after trauma. She mentors and guides people through trauma care, supporting them on their healing journey to rise, rebuild, and reclaim their destined abundant life. Her pastoral heart shines through everything she does as she empowers individuals to believe that their past does not disqualify their purpose. She is also a proud mother of 3 adults, children, and a living testament that broken beginnings do not define one's future. She is the author of the non-fiction book, Love Breaks the Silence, a heartfelt and trauma-informed work that sheds light on the hidden wounds of abuse and the healing power of God's love. Ibironke's work benefits from a distinct voice, which is shaped by our personal experiences and our prior role as a professional officer. Welcome, Minister Ibironke, to this talk show. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's nice to be with you, Pastor Bola. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you for joining me this wonderful morning. Today's topic is the impact of violence on children through adulthood. So before we dive into the main topic, could you please throw more light into your background and how you end up being a provisional officer?
Yeah, of course. First, I just want to let you know, I love your background. I'm looking at it.
Thank you.
A bit later at the end, what that means to me. Yes, so I have come from a background in which I was born in England, partly raised in Nigeria. But either way, my father in particular was a very violent person. Wow. He's gone to be with the Lord now, and there was restoration. I came to realize that God uses our brokenness and he puts the pieces together. He creates something beautiful, but he wants us to walk through that journey of healing. So for me, part of that was even my career, because I found myself really having compassion and mercy. It's like God gave me an extra dose of compassion for people, whether it were people with disabilities, mental ill health, or people with substance misuse issues. No matter what it was, there was always this feeling of wanting to help and bring restoration. And I recognized later on that my career at that time was my calling. So some people have their calling, they're pastors, but they're in the pulpit. Some people are pastors in their jobs. God is using them to nurture. And that was what my experience of becoming a probation officer. I'm actually not working as a probation officer anymore. I actually work part-time with a charity, and I also have my own CIC. But God led me into working as a probation officer and to bring for me to have the knowledge of the criminal justice system and work with people who have experienced childhood experiences, adverse childhood experiences, but also who have gone on to make victims because of their own brokenness. So victims were getting victims. And the Lord will always give me a great sense of justice, his mind, his breakthrough in those areas, even though I couldn't preach to them. And yes, that's how my career as a probation officer took off. But like I said, I'm no longer working as in that space. I'm working with women who are in prison and coming out of prison now.
Wow, thank you for that, ma. Thank you for that. And also, in your book called Love Break the Silence, you weren't using your name, you were using your pen name. How do you come about Serena Peters?
Very interesting question, because actually I had other names. What happened was that I had been working as a probation officer, and I was actually doing, like sometimes what you call locum work, working in different offices. And the Lord had told me some years ago about writing my book and telling my story of my own adverse childhood experiences. And when I now began to write my book, it just dawned on me that, hang on, you've been working under authority and with authority in the criminal justice system. And at one time as a social worker, you've spoken to so many people who have been broken. You've heard their stories. And I just had this overwhelming sense of, you've been having a mask on your own face. Your own pain had been covered, but out of the residue of that and out of God healing you, you're now writing things that are really serious. And it just dawned on me. And I thought, okay, I'm going to obey God's voice. I'm going to write the book. And also some of the people in that book were still living. And I had asked and spoken with them about what I was going to write. So I decided to change the name. And my son, my youngest son, his name is Joseph. We kind of thought of some names. And he said, Mom, yeah, that's about right, what you're going to. He said, I don't think you should. I think you should use your real name. But however, Mom, if this is a name you're going to put, make it look real. And that's how we came about Serena. Not necessarily because of Serena Williams, but Serena just came to me and the Peters, yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Now we're going into our question. As I said, we're discussing the impact of domestic violence on children through adulthood. How does witnessing domestic violence as a child affect their emotional development?
It very much does, because you know that from when babies are born, they're looking at the mother or the father or the caregiver, even if it's the grandmother, whoever is the caregiver. You can coo. If you follow a child and you coo in front of them and say, ooh, they'll copy. After something, they'll copy you. So children are born innocent and pure, and they're always seeking to learn. But they don't learn necessarily what we say. They learn by what we do and who we are, most importantly. Because we can even do things and not be that person. Actually, there's a deeper connection from children. There's an intelligence that babies are born with. We might call it a survival instinct. But the way God has created babies, they actually can learn from you, your feelings, the silence in the house. The unspoken words are all signals and a form of communication. I'm someone who God has used a lot of positive psychology to help me recover. And I recognize that, we need to think and see what God has done with people. When we look at people who who are partially sighted or have no sight, there's another sense that's in. It's a sense of perception. They can perceive, they can smell, everything becomes heightened. Now, children in a home where there's domestic violence, their senses, even though they cannot articulate and verbalize, are all kicking in. So children, it has been proven that children who witness or who see, or in a home where there's domestic abuse, because they now call it domestic abuse as opposed to domestic violence, covers other aspects of abuse. They can sense it and they begin to develop, and it begins to affect their brain, even at the development stage. And, as we go on, we're going to talk about psychology and what the neuroscientists say about that. Children's brains are evolving. It's still evolving, and it's creating patterns of belief, patterns of thoughts, structures. And we go on to that later on, where we talk about pulling down strongholds, things that have become solid in our mind. So yes, children are impacted by domestic abuse. I just want to quickly say that the reason why it's been called domestic abuse rather than domestic violence, because there are about 5 streams of domestic abuse.
Okay.
And some people might say, but I've not been violent. I've experienced that before. X, he said, have I ever touched you? And I have to say no. He said, so you can't call me violent. I'm not an abuser. So we know that there are some men that use what you call coercive control. We heard of gaslighting. We've heard of neglect. We've heard of financial abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and even in the context of marriages. So when you look at that, it's covered under domestic abuse, and women or men, because we know it's not always the perpetrator. The person perpetrating is not always the woman. It can be the men who stand in the gap. It means that there's a whole wide spectrum in which the law, as far as the UK law and USA, can cover and tell that person, you've got to stop doing this because there are consequences legally and lawfully. They can't just, but I've never been violent physically with my hands. There are all sorts of other ways in which that act covers people who are experiencing domestic abuse now.
Wow, that's true, ma. That's true. Because, sometimes people say, because I'm not eating you or this, that means I'm not abusing you. But emotional trauma or abuse, let's call it the way you mention it now, domestic abuse, not domestic violence. Emotional one is even more more even dangerous than the physical one.
Yes.
Both are dangerous, but the emotional one, because the person is dying inside.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, how does seeing violence at home affect early childhood fears and anxiety?
So when a child is experiencing or witnessing domestic abuse in any of those 5 categories we've mentioned, it has a number of layers of effects. First of all, academically.
Okay.
Psychologically, because there's a fear of what mom might do to dad or dad might do to mom. It plays itself out with the child not being able to manage their own emotions. They can become aggressive to their siblings. They can act out at school. And for those of us from a faith connection, they can act out in the church. They can act out, if they were Muslims, in the mosque. Wherever there's tradition and religion, they can act out, and they might be seen to be the person who's not understanding what's going on. But really and truly, they're acting out what they saw or what they feel. So a child becomes vulnerable. They can lose their concentration in school. This child could have been a very bright, intelligent, bubbly child. Suddenly they can withdraw. They can lose their ability to speak, to communicate. They can have what you call muffled speech. They can start to stammer. I'm not saying stammering is always from a domestic abuse situation, but it can begin to happen because they can lose their sense of identity, their sense of their love, their self-esteem. Domestic abuse opens a door of fear and anxiety. The shouting, the screaming, the banging of cups, the swinging the doors, or where domestic abuse includes a parent, let's say the father, going out and not coming back for a long time. Nobody knows where he is because he's gone out in anger for days. And then suddenly he appears like, I own this house. That dad, unfortunately, is messing with their child's nervous system. They have been rattled internally. When will dad come home? Would he be angry? What should I do to be a good child at home so my dad will not leave? Or when he comes back, he will not be abusive to mommy or to the siblings. How do I control? So from the little things I've said, I've only shared about 5 or 6 things. Let's take one example so we can really come in at least one example. Let's say a child now is experiencing this.
Okay.
And his parents are Christians, come from a religious background, shall we say. They read the Bible, they pray in the morning, they even do fasting and prayer and etc. And a child sometimes hears mommy and daddy screaming and shouting, but in particular daddy's voice raising and threatening and saying things like, I don't even know why I married you. It was that vision that Pastor so-and-so had. As for the children, look at so-and-so, he's not even doing well. I think it's your fault. You know, the child is hearing all these negative words. You understand?
Yeah.
And even though maybe the mother is not being physically beaten, the child sometimes sees her crying from her prayer. Because let's get real here. Especially those of us from an African or Asian background, we are very good at praying, no matter what kind of church we go to. So even the prayers might include those things, but not help the child to understand that there's a loving God. So, for example, when the father has stormed in and stormed out, made those threats, the mother might call those children together and say, "Come, let us pray, let us pray, let us pray. We bind the devil in Jesus' name." The child doesn't understand what devil are you binding at that stage. I'm not saying we shouldn't teach our children warfare and how to stand. What I'm saying is that mother is probably praying from a place of panic, wounding, maybe even revenge or unforgiveness, whatever. So we think we're creating a pathway of a blessing that my child will learn how to be a prayer warrior. But where else? We're drawing that child away from the love of the Father. What we need. So this is just the example. I'm going back to this example I was giving. That child now goes to school, might be violent in school, but polite at home. Because if the parents don't recognize that what we are doing amongst ourselves is affecting our children, the children might be obedient within the home, take the Bible, pray, whatever they do, wash up after cups. When they see auntie and uncle at church, oh, good morning, auntie, good morning, uncle. When they see the teacher, good morning. And those, they may play the part, but inwardly there is something eaten at them.
Damn. So
we want children are whole. We don't want children who there's a film that people used to watch. It's called Dr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll. So Dr. Hyde was good maybe during the day, and at night it became this monster who contained two personalities within them. And then in the end, they're being given a diagnosis that, they have PD, personality disorder. These are some of the root issues. The child is being contained, can't express their emotions. There's no resolution to the conflict within the home. They are caught up in a war zone, and within them, there's a war. And that child has to manage that, navigate that. Doesn't want to upset mommy, doesn't want to upset pastor, doesn't want to upset this one. And then goes to school, rants at school, comes home, gets told off. Why the teacher told me that you were rude. Why were you rude? The teacher told me you hit somebody. Why did you do that? Is trying to give a reason. So it affects children at a very early age. It can cause also physical and biological issues. It can even change the menstrual cycle. It can bring it on early or delayed for a child as well, because there's something within her body that is not being regulated. It can cause anxiety, tummy trouble, irritable bowel syndrome. You can go on and go on and go on, and the list goes on. I remember even as an adult now, a big adult with 3 children, when I was learning how to drive, I was trying to put into compartments my emotional feeling and the fact that I was going to do my driving test this day, driving test, and it was like a make or break. It was so important for me. With 3 children, I didn't want to keep carrying 2 buggies on the bus, It was overwhelming. So this meant so much. It meant so much for me to be able to get my children to the childminder, and it meant so much. But I thought, I'm okay. I don't have any fear. I don't have any torment about this. So on the day of the driving down to the driving station, I had cramps that was so bad and severe. I initially thought it was an attack of the devil. And I was trying to bind it. What nonsense! It was so bad. It's like I was having diarrhea, and I was thinking, what rubbish is this on the day? It wasn't necessarily the devil. I needed to understand that there was anxiety and fear, and bring that to the Lord and say, God, let your presence come. My body's reacting to these things severely. And I, as a big adult with 3 children, being someone that knows how to pray, fast, and bind and loose, I'd had that experience and had no control over my system. Then why do we think that children will have a better control? They literally have no control. If the house and the walls of that house are broken down, the enemy, the wolf, will come through to get the prey. They will make the children pray. But we say no. That's why we're having these conversations, that we need to wake up. Another dimension is that it affects a child's emotional development. It can make them hyper vigilant. What do you mean by that? The child always looking. They're in the car. They're always watching. They're going down. They jerk very easily. So their sense of freedom and self-esteem is affected. I mean, it can affect with friendships. They can even be open to nightmares, terror attacks, constantly seeing things in their dream. And being a woman of faith, I'm aware that sometimes that is the enemy intruding into our children's dreams, but sometimes it's not. It's they're playing and reacting what they actually experience within the home. So it can bring a sense of shame and guilt, difficulty identifying and expressing their feelings, and it can also, most importantly, bring an attachment, a wrong attachment. Children can get their sense of safety, sense of safety and identity from wrong peers that we don't, or even from a teacher, or even from social media, which is happening. So we don't want our generation of children to be cut off from us. We want to embrace them and bring them to the warmth of the Father's love, to know that God is a good God, is a loving God, and He wants a relationship with them. But if they have an attachment problem or a rejection problem, they may be rejecting God, who is the shepherd of their soul. They do not recognize that. So it can cause a load of issues, not being able to cope, other physiological issues like wanting to use the toilet, but most importantly, just their brain. The real brain is affected, and it can also create other secondary issues. So, example, some children, they can become perfectionists. Now, sometimes people use the word perfectionist as a badge of honor. I'm just a perfectionist, or my spouses, and it seems nice and innocent, and to some degree it is nice, because when you think of a perfectionist, you think they're very clean, you can rely on them, they're going to get the job done well, but it trails on into their leadership, into their influence in the workplace, at university, at school, college, work, teamwork, in perfectionist mode, and they may not have tolerance for somebody else. So anything that needs healing, we need to address, rather than saying, well, everybody knows I'm a perfectionist. Yeah, you can be a perfectionist because of things, that's where you grew up, and you've used your trauma to help to be a perfectionist. But are you stepping on the toes of other people? Are you expecting them to line up like you do? Because yours is a coping mechanism, because it's a survival strategy that you went through childhood. So these are some of the issues, how it trails up to from the child to the adult.
Wow. Wonderful. You've covered my actually the remaining question for that part. You've covered it. But I want to ask this question. People that comes from an abusive home, is it possible that most of these kids are the one that bullies other kids in schools?
So they come from a home where you mean there's
they're domestic abuse or dysfunctional, let's put it dysfunctional home. Is it possible that most of these kids are the one that normally bullies other students in schools?
I think they're quite a good number. And if you look at, maybe you've got the NNSPC stats, because there's certain research that's been done. I would say yes, but not all the time. There could be other issues going on, but it is most of the time, I would say it's probable they've come from a home where there's domestic abuse. But one of the sides, or one of the issues of domestic abuse is the aspect of emotional neglect.
Okay.
Because even though it seems harmless, but if you're not affirming your child, telling them you love them, embracing them, saying, well done, you got this, I'm proud of you, then it can border on emotional neglect, or not even bothering to go to their school, football and things that they like, affirming them, then it tells them that I'm not noticed, I'm not wanted, I'm abandoned. They feel this sense of abandonment. And I think that some children that go and bully other children in school, I think that's the film of where they can be bullies as well, because they're hurting within them and they now take it on another child. They have been compared at home by parents or aunties or uncles. And let's not forget that domestic abuse covers where parents prefer one sibling against the other.
That's another danger.
Especially siblings with a disability or hidden disability that parents are busy praying over their heads, the child's head. It depends on how we pray for a child with a disability. That child begin to feel withdrawn, angry. And when there's anger and abandonment, rejection, it can lead to rebellion.
True.
And when that rebellion sets in, they can go to school in a rage. Anger, one little word from another child can make them throw their books at them, bully another child, or they group up with other children who come from homes similar to them, may not even have a faith, but maybe where their father is an alcoholic, or the mother is on substances, or whatever issues they're going through. They group up with them and see them as their peers. They're the ones that can understand them, because they can understand them, and they might join up and become gangs, groups of children who come together and now bully another child. And it might not even be a child that is excelling in school. They might even bully another child that maybe has a limp, has other issues, maybe has been in foster care. It could be anything that they can pinpoint at that child. So maybe what they will do is now they can now bully another child whose esteem is very low, who needs really love and care. But the good news is that we can teach our children, we can resolve these issues within the home, within our school, within our community, so our children don't become super bullies. Sometimes our children, because there's a lot of anger, rage and anger within them, be physical with other children, or they can be a child that smiles, that will say, don't come near me, leave me alone, don't come near me. And once someone steps on their toe in school, it's like a volcano erupts.
Oh, yeah.
That even shocks them. As a probation officer, I remember working with a few people who were on medication to control their anger. This is not about controlling depression.
Wow.
Or to sleep. They were on medication to control their anger. There is medication. Because they will have what you call, I think they call it like a blackout. They've done the deed not knowing what they've done. We don't want our children to be like that. But if we don't address these issues like we're talking about now, we can lead our children into being a ticking time bomb. And that can take place in school. Or they can do it slowly and gradually by continuously bullying other children who seem weaker than them.
But that I've experienced some parents whereby their children are bullies. When the teacher talk to them, they don't want to accept that their children are bullies. How can you help those such parents? Because I believe those parents, they live in denials. That no, my children, they're, you're covering your children bad behavior and say, no, my children cannot do this. So how can you help such parents?
I think the only way we can help such parents, so if it's, if you're a friend or, or they're your sister or they're in your church or your community, you have to kind of educate them.
Okay.
That if this child's experiencing something, your child may have been bullying other children, and what that might look like, and not to give excuses, and to educate them on the fact that if this is not dealt with now, because there's evidence that's proven they can go on to be someone that they shouldn't be in the future, and that lovely, glorious destiny that God has for them, who they're created to be, might be sabotaged. So I think it's about educating the parent and saying, and giving them facts and statistics to say this is what has happened. Give them real life cases. I think that will help them and tell them then how do they now react to their child, because some parents, they become angry with their child. Anger begets anger. You know,
True.
you can't use anger to squash anger. Just like Jesus, in spite of the stress, the physical stress he was in the garden of Gethsemane, I think it was Peter who took his sword, maybe out of fear more than anger, and struck off the ear of one of the Roman soldiers. And Jesus said, "What are you doing? Don't you know that he that lives by the sword will die by the sword?" Basically.
Yeah.
Anger begets anger. This is not the way of victory. The way of victory is to walk in love and use your authority. So if a parent hears about their child being mischievous or bullying another child, don't go home and start screaming and shouting or deny them their food. Now talk. You learn skills of how to engage. I'm going to be honest with you. Part of the background I came from, in spite of the fact that I was at one time a social worker, then a probation officer, loving people, helping them, caring for them. I struggled as a parent, navigating my own emotions, identifying my emotions. I remember when I used to discipline, and then I was separated and then divorced. And then I found myself to be a parent bringing up my children living with me, basically. Although they would sometimes still see their dad, but we were not living together and they were living with me under my authority. When I wanted to discipline my children, especially my youngest, I remember I wouldn't open my eyes because I just seen everything. I didn't want to see his face. That was the way the anger was coming up. If I don't see your face and I can talk to you, do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then my son had a very calming voice. Then, Mom, why is that when you're disciplined, you don't look at me? You just close your eyes. And I realized that there was some anger that had to be dealt with. So what I'm saying to parents, no one's condemning you, but we have to work on ourselves. We have to grow and we have to learn skills. We have to accept, identify, and take responsibility and be accountable. And sometimes we are protecting ourselves when we deny that our children are bullies or bullying people. But we don't want to get to the fact that we don't want it to become a point whereby they do something drastic, that they are expelled from school or they become, they join a gang or they become violent or they pretend to you in the home and are dutiful. They bow down, yes, ma, good morning, ma. How are you? And you think, it's my son. But somewhere else, they are bullies. You do not want your son to have two different personality types. So what you need to do as a mother, you need to bring your pain or father before God and say, Lord, I am so much in pain with my child. This is what's been said to me. Show me, teach me, help me. And also learn by talking to other people, professionals. As Christians, we need to read books. We need to listen to podcasts, this kind of messages, go to forums, go to school forums. It's not everything they say that is anti-Christ in those things.
Yeah.
There are people that you can learn from that are not even born again, spirit-filled Christians. Talking and discussing will help you to deal with your own pain of shame and guilt. Don't cover up your guilt. That why is my child a bully? By denying it. Don't minimize it either. Don't become a hardened person that you think, oh, well, what they did to the child was just small. The child needed it. It was racist because they were racist to my child. I'm not saying that we shouldn't teach our children to defend themselves and speak up. I do believe that is right. And I do think they should learn how to defend themselves, back off, learn some things.
Yeah.
But not when they bully. There's a big difference between bullying a child because you're an agreeable, out of what reason, and defending yourself and speaking up for yourself. And there's a big difference between being assertive and just bullying and harassing people out of your own emotional state. And parents need to recognize that when you're told that your child's a bully or is bullied, you want to deny. It's a natural response. It's not my child. You look at your child's photograph, say, not this one, can't be. You want to deny it. But the cheater telling you is not trying to be bad to you. They're telling you the facts and you need to deal with the facts.
Wow, that's good. That's really good. So, anyway, you said so many things when you were talking before we enter into bullying. So describe the impact of violence on child academic performance, ability to learn. Okay,
so we know that the brain is an organ that God's put with every human being. Okay, And there are parts of the brain that triggers happiness, good hormones as well. A part that helps us have pathways to receive information, store information in the right place. When a person or a child is faced with and opened up to domestic abuse consistently, we're not talking about, even though one-off can cause a lot of trauma, but especially when it's been consistent for some time, their brain stores that in their memory. Somebody wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And there's a book by there are many books that have been written anyway on the brain. So the brain now begins to store memory, memorize, it keeps that in its memory. And as that happens, it means that when that child is trying to read and study, the brain is actually focusing on trying to filter the experiences that person has had. That is in relation to domestic abuse, the domestic violence that they've experienced or that their parents have. And I just want to quickly say, before I go any further, there was a law came into being in the UK, and law in 2021, that children who witness domestic violence are themselves individually classified as victims in that sense because of the seriousness of it. So going back to your question, so the mind now becomes full of worry, anxiety. It can create images. The images that should have been to study the images that the brain is bringing out are images of fear. What happened? Anxiety. How did that person speak to me? What does that mean? It's like the brain is in another mode of activity. It's not giving itself rest to receive new information and place it in that part of the brain that will help that person to achieve academically. It's like the mind is full of different things. And that's when depression can also set in. Person's trying to cram all these experiences and put them in the brain, but at the same time, they're meant to be able to study. It's like a river. You can't have a river, stagnant water and fresh water come into it and think that the fresh water is going to actually help the water that is stagnant, that is diseased. You need to get the things of the stagnant that has made that water stagnant, maybe bricks and mud and slime, get them out. And when the fresh water is coming in, it can produce a beautiful flow. Academically, people's minds, when it's been filled with depression, anxiety, is going to affect their academic progress. It might even affect their behavior. They might begin to perceive and align things are said in ways that are not helpful. What do I mean by that? A lecturer might be giving you that person an example, and they are seeing that lecturer as an enemy. Their mind's it's in this overdrive. Or you might see that lecturer saying something that is very offensive, and personalizing it to them. And it's not personal to you. So instead of understanding and receiving, the person's like debunking what is being said.
Wow.
So it's becoming more proudful. The person is becoming a bit proudful in that category. They're not really receiving, but God took you there to learn. God put you in that position to understand things so that you can become that professional. So there's so many ways in which it does affect our children. Another way is that some young people at that stage, because they can't cope, they're not sleeping well. So they might feel they need sleeping tablets. They might not want to go to lectures because they haven't slept well. It has a vicious cycle effect. They might start trying to think, how can I calm myself down? And that's when cannabis enters the scene. Because another friend might say, I've got a tranquilizer that helps me out. Or I've got this pipe. Lots of young people are smoking these electronic cigarettes now. They look funny, nice, but they make it look and you see the smoke going up, you make it look as if you're inhaling and you're exhaling something that you don't want. It's like you can see the chest raising and rising. And some people are thinking, that's what I need. I need to inhale and exhale. So they're learning, rubbish rhythms. Rhythms that don't really help them. there are there are things you can practice to help calm your nerves down and get rid of anxiety. But it's not the inhale of cigarettes and things, and it's not what we think the cannabis or the ecstasy that gives them a sense of courage and false boldness. We've heard of cases where they've used ecstasy in parties, and they're going to go and give a talk, and they think they have to pump themselves with something.
Wow.
So these are some of the ways in which the brain now is affected, because they're now trying to help themselves academically, but they're going to the wrong channels that are actually toxic and poisonous.
Wow. Thank you. That's so deep though. Anyway, we're going to move on. It's a lot. It is a lot.
Yes.
It is a lot. So that's why, parents, we have a lot to do.
Yes.
Parents have a lot to do. They just have to calm down, and because of the children.
Yes.
There's this proverb that says, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffer for it.
Yes.
You understand? It's not the two elephants, but the grass they are standing on, fighting, suffer for it. So it has a lot of dangerous impact on our children.
Yes, it does.
Anyway, what is the coping mechanism children may develop in a violent home?
Well, good question. I love that question.
Thank you.
Because there's behavioral changes, we talked about academic impact. We have what you call the cycle of abuse, long-term mental health. I've mentioned some. It could be PTSD, depression, substance misuse, and also bipolar. Bipolar. I'm not. By the way, I'm making a disclaimer here. I am not a mental health professional. I'm a professional from probation, social work, and a trauma-informed care trained person. But I cannot give a diagnosis of a mental health, and I do not do prescriptions. I am not a mental health professional, but I am learning or learned. So I would say that there are all sorts of long-term mental, health issues that happen to children. But one of the things I really want to hammer on before I forget, I have got some notes here. We've talked about economic development. We've talked about coping, and that's the one I want to bring. Sometimes they suppress their own emotional feelings, and their immune system can become compromised. So immune problems, I guess, is not just physical or biological, it's emotional, because there is so much power on the mind and the brain and our feelings, and how that impacts the physical development of our body. Another one I want to really bring on is that there's a terminology called parentification.
Okay.
When a child and perfectionism or protective connections, what does that mean? When a child is subject to domestic abuse from parents, or even, and let's also give some other scenarios, or maybe an older sibling against a parent, because that sometimes happens in some single families, where a younger child, 7, might see their 15-year-old sibling having rages against their mother. Because we don't like to talk about that. That's a topic that is very, very uncomfortable, but we need to expose everything. You understand?
True.
So if you see a 7-year-old seeing that against their mother from their sibling, let's say 15 or 16, or the father against the mother, or the mother against the father, and also let's say that father has a disability, maybe, or he's had an illness that has made him, more weak or more tired or whatever. Just think of all the scenarios that happen in life. You understand? Basically, he's not going to raise his voice at the woman and say, I'm the man in this house. He's in a sense of vulnerability. And you have a woman raging against him, and you have a 7-year-old. What does that do? That child might begin to parent the mother or the father, depending on whose it is. And what does that look like? They become literally trying to become the economic provider. They become the financial responsibility. Mom, do we have enough? Are you sure we have enough? Or Dad, are you sure?
Wow.
They take on roles they shouldn't do. Is something coming today? You become anxious about things that an adult should take care of. Have the taxes? Will the lights go off? Are you sure the lights won't go off? Because when I do my schoolwork, they become like an adult very quickly, which is not beneficial, because some people might say, but that's good, that's resilience, that's tenacity, that's how we grew up. And it's not in this society. You don't want to grow up like that, because if you lose your childhood because you are the parent to your parents, you lose the flow and the glow. And then that's when sometimes when children hit about 17 or 18 or going to university, they become a different person. They move away from the house and they're trying to find their identity in wrong places. So we can't boast and say it's good, and boast about it. We need to bring the remedy. So we've talked about parentification, where they feel emotionally, psychologically, even financially responsible for those parents. They're even trying to calm mommy and daddy down. That should not be the role of a child. They try and come in between. They become people pleasers and appeasers. If they are people pleasers and appeasers, that means that when they have their jobs or when they have their own relationships, they may take on that role as well, because that's what they survived with. And then they're bringing survival into their new marital relationships. They now become, they now want to bring that into a sphere where their partner demands that, no, I want you to be a whole person. I don't want you to come in being that crying person, or I don't want you to becoming that dominating person. I don't need you to be to dominate me. This happens sometimes to women, maybe where the dad has been absent, or where the dad has been abusive and physically are violent as well. Not providing. Sometimes the girls at an early age, there used to be this saying, they wear the trousers.
Oh, yeah.
They wear the trousers and they take that into the matrimonial home. Now, which man wants a man to wear the trousers with him, really and truly? You don't need a woman talking down to you, or being verbally abusive or silently abusive, the silent treatment. You want a woman to be a woman. So these are some of the damages of it. Another part of it is that our self-esteem identity, this is really strong for how this affects children. Because when their self-esteem is affected, they might not be who they are called to be. They may not do the things they really can do. They might feel they're shy most of their life. They might be asked to speak and they think, not me, I can't speak. You understand? Their voice, their strength, their power that God's given to them might be silenced. And then they might begin to beat up on themselves, thinking there's nothing good at them. There's nothing good about them. And then that's how young girls have boyfriends very easily. They try and find love and affection in the wrong places. Some children are finding social media an outlet. They are being praised to pedophiles, pornographic information. They can't discern between the two because they're trying to cope with their emotional issues. Another one is not being able to trust people. It breaks the trust.
Yeah.
Trust has been broken when, there's been violence and abuse in the house, or maybe against them as well. Because remember that when we talk about domestic abuse, we're not talking about just against the parent. It could be the parent on the child. The parent is taking that on the child. Or the parent has developed a mental health illness now, like bipolar, depression, any other, or yes, or OCD. OCD, maybe something they never had, or maybe it was there, and now it's like, why did you not put these shoes in order? But I told you I want black with black, white with white. The forks must be arranged like this, and this is not something to be proud of, to be glorifying. This is your overt perfectionist because of your mental health issues, that you want to see everything in order. You come into a room, why isn't light not bright? Why is it lightened? Because it helps you as an adult to be in control, and you're putting that on your child. So that child now has more issues with identity, what they know, what they don't know, and they have to kind of find ways of coping. And that's when, like we said before, drugs, alcohol, early, sexual encounters, becoming abusive themselves, running away from home.
Hmm.
And the one we don't want is running to social services.
Wow, that one is bad.
Yes, social services becoming involved.
Wow, that's quite a lot, isn't it? I'm thinking about this parentification, you say.
Yes, yes,
I've had a girl, let me just say a girl, said because she's raised in a home whereby the mom is the one that wear the whole cap. You understand, taking the role. And this particular girl was saying that when I grow up, I'm gonna be the one doing this. I won't let my husband do that. And that's really wrong.
yeah,
And I said, no, this is not right for this kind of girl saying this stuff. Because sometimes we, especially from Africa background,
yeah,
we always say, because you mentioned that we think, oh, they're growing up. You know, what they're saying is like they are getting mature. But we never know that all these things they are saying that are not right in their home is the one getting into their head.
yes,
So parents has a lot to do.
yes.
Wow.
To be aware, I think parents have to be aware that you can't put that expectation, that role. God made you the parent and for a reason. And your role before the eyes of the Lord is to parent them, obviously asking him for grace and wisdom, but love. He gives you the ability, but you can't make your child and think that it will not have an effect. It will. And unfortunately, it has happened to a number of people.
Yeah.
Where the girl has said, my husband will have to do this, or he wouldn't. This will not happen, or this will happen, because there's what you call role modeling. The role model has started from when you were young in the home, in the family home, and obviously without them learning new skills, without it being spoken to, and without it being broken into, they're going to go back and they might not even intentionally do it, but it's a carryover.
Yeah.
On your home,
like what they call a generational pattern.
Yes, a generation. Yeah, generational cycles.
Yeah, cycles.
And they may not have a husband that wants that. They might not realize their temperaments. There are 5 types of temperaments. But depending on the type of spouse they marry, that person's temperament might not take what they think. And this is where we use the word emotional intelligence. You need to be emotionally intelligent and learn things and become more aware that we don't know it all. That our parents knew a little, but we have to improve. Even where we had parents who never were abusive to themselves, because let's look at this on another coin. The other coin is that some children have grown up in homes where they never heard their parents shout or yell or anything, but there was still that underlying control. They couldn't have a conversation of differences and truth and being authentic with each other and being vulnerable with each other. Now that child can equally grow up and have a false sense of a relationship, because like my parents never argued. They always walked in perfect 100% love. It's not true. So maybe these parents are actually doing it behind the scenes. I think that parenting also involves and letting children know that it's okay. We love each other and it's a safe space here in this home, but we have our differences and we're working it out. So we shouldn't also try to overprotect our children and try to remove, because then we're not helping them, to grow up and be whole and wholesome people. But parentification is a role that a young person takes over, or it might be from an early child or teenager years. Another case that from a social work connection that I've seen is when maybe a parent has mental ill health. And how do you help that child not to become the parent? They're already the carer, maybe. There's nothing you can do sometimes. They are the carer. But the fact is there are help groups that child should be exposed to. Maybe within the church, we should have more of that. Because there are children who are the carers for their parents. Maybe it's a mental ill health or it's a physical health ish challenge, or maybe their parent has some kind of disability that is, coming out now. So how do we help that child so that it doesn't become a damaging thing that they're doing, but it becomes a wholesome thing? And I think that there are keys and tools and skills that we have to help that child, and dialogues and conversations and time out, time to go and relax, time to debrief, time to be a child, time to be silly, time to draw. You understand? Not always seriousness. So I think that's where the community or the family, school, and whatever helps that child, that needs to be in that child's life, because we can't take away the reality that they are the carer. And even social services, they recognize that sometimes young adults or young children can be, teenagers can be the carer. And that's an agreement between that young person and the parent. It's not child abuse, but it can become abusive if that child does not have the right outlet to grow.
Wow, that's good. We're progressing to adulthood.
Yes.
And because these children, if they continue to go, just continue to say it's quite wide with the children side of abusive. Yes, analyze the impact of childhood exposure to violence on adult relationship dynamics.
Yeah. Ooh, where do we start? So,
we're going to start from somewhere.
Yes. So it's been noted that where there's been repeated domestic abuse and violence, and we've talked about all the ramifications of them, that person in their relationship now, as a married person or a relationship, maybe they're dating or whatever, it can manifest in so many ways, because there can be unresolved issues that now start to come out. There could be physical aggression. There could be a short span of patience. Instead of being patient with that person, it's like there's no patience, which is a fruit which brings the love in a relationship, which grows the love, because they've learned that things have to happen fast, quickly, or else. So they're bringing that into a relationship, and then they become violent or say things, because words can kill, as the Bible says. You don't have to pick up a stone to kill a person who's vulnerable with you, who's in love with you. It could be the words that can kill. So saying the words that one hasn't even thought about. I was listening to somebody, and I'd recommend his book. It's called "And David Perceived He Was a King," by something Must. I can't remember his first name right now. Something L Must anyway. And it's on, Amazon and things like that. And David perceived he was a king. He's a pastor and a minister, and he's what you call being an apostolic leader, raising lots of leaders, and he has seen a lot in ministry. So his name is Del Mast, Del D-A-L-E, then middle name L begins with L, then Mast, M-A-S-T, and David Perceived He Was King. A brilliant book, a useful tool that we all need to read. Out of his years and his exposure in ministry, he's had people who liked him and people who didn't like him. I'm going to your question. I'm not deviating. I'm just coming back to your question. In the process, he has found people who've written him emails, nasty words spoken to him, so that he couldn't believe it. And so he kept a few of them, really damaging things that you wouldn't expect another born-again, spirit-filled, prophet-speaking Christian to say. And he was saying, God, what is all this? And he began to realize that they're speaking out of the unhidden, the hidden wound in their soul. So what he began to do, when that season passed and he had developed a new relationship with those people, once or twice he had called them and said, what happened? You said this thing to me or about me. And they said, no, I could never, never have said that. It's not me. I never said anything like that. He said, no, you did. He said, no, it's not me. That's not my nature. I can never have spoken to you like that. I don't, that's not true. But because he had kept some emails or words, he will now show it to them. And they'll be confronted with the evidence. The fact is that evidence does not have to become their truth. It's a fact. It means they need to dive into inner healing. So this is the same way it happens in a matrimonial issue. It happens in ministry. It happens between two people who love each other. Someone can say something so that they didn't really mean, or their attitude can be really violent and aggressive. They need to see that as a wake-up call, that hang on, I've carried things in and I need to get help. It could be, it affects, like we talked about, we didn't talk about, in childhood, we didn't talk about sexual abuse, because I think that's a topic that needs to be covered under another meeting. Okay. But where a child has been exposed to that, or has been, or is a survivor and carries that into it's not been resolved, they need a lot of nursing in their marriage, because we know it can affect their intimacy in marriage. It can affect the way they conduct themselves. It can affect them even wanting to be married, or even in the marriage, using that as an antidote. They keep trying to survive on love, and misuse what God put as a gift in their marital home, and it's causing an issue for their partner. So there's so many things that from the realms of domestic abuse that affect. It can affect them, the way also they lead their life at work. It begins to affect their work. But in pertaining to their relationship with their spouse, there can be, a sense of shame, embarrassment, words that they never thought they would say, actions they never thought they would take, and obviously separation and divorce. It can even involve the police, social services. It affects them financially. How do two people who are always at loggerhead, how do they manage their finances together? It can affect secrets. It can make them become secret. Oh, I have to keep a secret from you. I can't trust you. Those are some of the things that happen, because from their young age, they've developed ways and pathways of coping that they survive. That's why it's called surviving. But you don't want to survive. You want to live the abundant life and overflow. So now they are called in marriage to have the abundant life and flow in joy, laughter, satisfaction, pleasure, growth. These are the abundance that we're meant to have. You understand? Wow. Safety. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. How does adult survivors of childhood domestic violence undo parenting?
Another good question. Well, there could be many ways. It's like, I need to watch over my back, over my children, so they can become very jealous, overprotective in an unhealthy way. We're called to protect our children, but a woman or a man who has gone through, let's say, sexual abuse, no matter what that was like, whether it was through an uncle, a parent, another sibling, a minister of the gospel, whatever that scenario, Boy Scouts, etc., whatever, it can make them unknowingly have a sense of adverse protection. They can't trust that child with any other person. And in these days and age, there's a fine line between a parent needing to do that because of how corrupt and evil the world is right now. So I do agree that we have to step it up. But God wants us to still do everything from a place of rest. Yeah. You can't be 24/7. You're not 24/7. You're not the Holy Spirit. God called us to be parents from a place of rest. And as our children grow through the various phases of development, baby, infant, they go to school, they go to infant school, then they go to secondary school. You can't be grieving, I wish they were still an infant, because everything was innocent and pure. The heart has to celebrate the phases of their growth. And you have to help them celebrate that, not thinking, oh, no, when you get your period, anything can happen now. Or, don't mind, whatever, let's say his name is Charlie. Don't mind Charlie. Don't go near Charlie. You can't be bringing your unresolved trauma mind thoughts into your child. You have to give them some leeway. The best way I would see it as is Moses. Moses was born during a time of deep trauma and wailing because all babies were being killed. So the mother put him in a basket and let the basket, obviously she made the basket so it wouldn't sink and made the basket go. But his sister and her watched from afar. I think parenting is about giving the children the resources, doing what we can do, cover with prayer. If there is an issue with that child, to speak to the teacher, say, look, I think my child's not whatever, needs more help or needs extra time or needs time off at school or whatever. You can do those things, but you can't be 24/7 rescuer. You have to give them, if you don't breathe, you're not giving your children permission to breathe. You understand? If you have anxiety over them, you're making them have anxiety or be very conscious. So they may need to take part in a drama and they think, no, I can't. They might be feeling shameful. So you as a parent can bring in your trauma onto that child. Another thing is that don't make financial situations out of traumatic financial situations. You want my children to suffer because you were neglected financially. Don't buy things on credit. You don't want somebody else. You don't want to feel that you're trying to make up for the past. That is not the way. Let God help you make up from the past. You understand? Yeah. And don't be quick to condemn other people who don't agree with you. I'm bringing this in prayer because I once had a colleague. I know our time is going. Yeah. He's Nigerian, and I was shocked because most Nigerians have a sense of God, who Jesus is, and he was so blasphemous. I thought, what on earth? And one day I asked him, and he will mock so badly. If you talk about Jesus, he'll talk about the Bible, he'll mock it and go. And I thought, you're Nigerian. Why are you doing that? Then he told me that his mother was a leader in Redeemed. And that he had his conflicts, obviously. And that it got to a time when she'll call him, let's call for prayer. And the prayer should be praying that it will be fall down and die prayer. So, God. And his spirit couldn't take that. And then she'll condemn him, then see him as into witchcraft, that, every demon. So sometimes I'm trying to say that we need to learn how to not bring the things we've gone through into action. Let them learn to love God and know God. Don't bring those prayer into our parenthood. Do it in a good way that children can understand what holy and righteous warfare is, but not traumatic prayer warfare. Split the two for them so they can be whole and love Jesus. That's what I'd say. Yeah, so those are some of the things. Feeding, eating, it can affect a child's diet, how they eat, overeating, but a parent that is trying to parent them might deny them even medication, you understand? Or over-medicate, every little thing, it's run to the doctor, or no, you don't need a doctor. It depends on what is going through. The fear that parent has might impact that child in so many ways.
Wow, that's good. Okay, before we go, I just want us to do these 2 questions. Please elaborate how stigma and silence contribute to the worsening of long-term effects. We're looking at the stigma and the silence contribute to worsening the long-term effects.
Okay, so amongst Black people, for example, the fear, always, we already have the fear of racism and things like that, and not being believed. Then there are cultural pressures to keep the family as one. Private matters. Then also for some, there's the immigration status, and now we're in a heightened place where it's like, am I liked? Am I going to be believed? So that might be it. So people can be trapped in violent homes where there's violence. If it's the spouse who has the immigration status or has the job that brings the income in. So I think that there's that fear, but there's also that stigma now, that economic situation that's coming in. The stigma can also become from churches hammering this on. I know I'm saying hammering because I know churches have done a lot of damage where they should have been a mouthpiece, they refuse. And where they've used their spiritual gifts. Someone's got a spiritual gift, say, no, Pastor so-and-so could never have done, he's right. No, Pastor so-and-so's gift is given to him by God. But that is separate from his personality. He needs to bear the fruit of the Spirit and don't make excuses. And we want to bind everything and see it as some person's a witch in the village. It's not always that. Sometimes it could be that, but sometimes it's that person that needs to take responsibility as an adult and be accountable, get help, get counseling. So the stigma in college that's involved with yours is when there's also a mental health issue. When there's a person, a parent, or an adult experiencing intrusive thoughts, PSTD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. Like images, they're seeing things in their sleep, they're sensing things, they go out and they think someone's looking at me, the whole world is staring at me. These are some of the flags, red flags or flags. I'm going to call it a red flag. These are some of the symptoms. How do they now bring that in to now saying that they're also going through domestic violence? Because if they don't deal with the issues of domestic violence, these are some of the things that happen. And sometimes people think that, oh, it's because they have mental health issues, challenges, that they're having a marital problem. No, sometimes they're separate, and sometimes the mental health and the domestic violence will lead to that. So we need to deal with the stigma that let's don't talk, it's shameful. Or for men in particular, they don't tell. Don't tell. Are you not a man enough not to tell? You mean you can't handle that woman? So a woman can handle you and laugh and the mockery.
Yeah.
That man has a gentle spirit. And they say, look at you. You're eating too much potato and sausage. Go and eat, go and eat our core food and you get your strength back. It's not about your strength, not your physical strength. You need to develop an inner core. And God wants to take you and heal the situation. Maybe you need to learn how to communicate. Maybe you need to go on a course. Maybe you need to expose yourself to those things that help you learn and grow in what it's like for a woman to be married to a woman in this day and age. I'll let you ask your next question.
Wow, thank you very much. So our final question, looking at time. Is it crucial to suggest several approaches that will support survivor in establishing early adult life? Suggest effective counseling or therapy approaches for affect children and adults.
Very, very important. Sometimes I would say look for a Christian counselor or therapist. And even sometimes Christian counselors and therapists, they might not be in line with what you believe. You understand totally. They might feel a child needs more rights or an adult needs more rights or something. But you can only pray and lift it to God and sample it to a few. There are all sorts of therapeutic interventions. I have gone through some myself. There's CBT. There's like psychoanalysis. I prefer that. There's EMDR. Look at my list now as well. And what it is, it helps a person bring out the pain of what they've gone through, where they are. There are some that use sight and hearing. What do you see? What do you feel? There's some that use breathing techniques. When a baby is born, one of the first signs of life is the way they breathe. That's the first lesson in how to breathe. The baby learns how to breathe in the air from where they were. They were in a cave. Well, not a cave. They were in a womb before. And now they have to learn how to use oxygen. When we've come out of domestic abuse or grew up, with a child abuse, child abuse atmosphere, we need to learn how to breathe, to be our real self. CBT and all these interventions can explore, and we're not forced to which role it is, which one works for us. It could be any of them that work for us. Community talking, story writing, journaling, loving nature, using nature. Why do we think God made so many flowers? Some people say, just let me eat my greens and my spinach, and that's all. These flowers, I don't need them. Your creator put flowers for there. Some people use animals. There's nothing. Don't ridicule people that like dogs and cats and say, look at them. Cats are not for witches. Cats are there for us. They are people that God can use to heal your soul by his spirit. Dogs they say, are man's best friends. They learn their master. They learn what your love language can be. So some of these are some of the ways in which God kind of streamlines our healing and assists us in learning, in being able to to heal, learn new skills.
Wow, thank you very much. So what one advice will you encourage parents that are in the domestic abuse environment, both parents and the children, or children growing up, going to higher education? What one advice do you want to give them?
First, another is, don't blame yourself, but go for a process of getting help and intervention. If you are threatened, then you might need to leave that place and definitely get the involvement of other organizations. You have like Women's Aid, and men have one for themselves. There's phone calls, there's Samaritan. I would say speak to your GP, but nowadays GPs are very busy. If you have a trusted person who is professional in your church or in your community or your family, you can speak to them if you think they're going to understand. Don't take sides, and don't diminish the level of how it's affecting you. If it's beginning to make you feel threatened, challenge your eating, you're affecting you from going to work, or your child from going to school, or your child is playing up, these are signs that you're not in control anymore. What you need to do is get help. You can speak to your pastors, you can listen to messages, but you need to do more. You need people around you. Where there's been other issues that have happened, sometimes you might need medication in extreme cases. I'm not against medication. If that helps you out, don't deny it. We're all different. Our frames are all different. Get educated about what you're going through. You can read things for yourself. And if you're in a place where the alleged perpetrator is there in your home, you're scared, there's some sites you can go on, like Women's Aid, whereby you can clear your history trail. You press a button, it says leave, and then it will remove all the history trail. Take that decision that your life is worth more than what you're going through. And don't underestimate the gravity or the impact this can have on your nervous system. Don't say, well, I think I'm hardened against that. It's only words. No, words hurt after some time. And the body keeps the score. Believe you, the body and the mind keep the score. So get the intervention.
Thank you very much. That is that from us today. And if you're a child or young adult going through domestic violence, don't keep silent. Seek for help. Go for therapy. Therapy is good. Like my guest said, there are so many. You can do CBT, you can do psychodynamic person center, and so on and so forth. Don't keep silent. Don't blame yourself. Don't live in regret. Don't live in isolation, and we pray that God Almighty will bless you all. That's that from us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my guest. Thank you for all those knowledge and those wonderful points you're bringing out on this topic. That's really wonderful and nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, Asmala. Nice being here.
Thank you.